right, there we go.
So welcome today to the Regional Synergies webinar. My name is Trista Puapaskinias, and today I am joined by my colleague, Riley Hawkswood. So if this is your first event with Cooperatives First, welcome. And we are really glad to meet you and that you decided to spend the next hour with us. So our business development organization supports and promotes the cooperatives in Western Canada. So we cannot do this without the generous support of our funder, Federated Cooperatives Limited. So if you are working with a co-op or just curious on how a co-op might work, please get in touch. We support co-op startups with incorporation, business planning, and governance support. So today, we're here for the Regional Synergies webinar. So this webinar series is where we feature initiatives where Indigenous and non-Indigenous groups have worked together to create economic development opportunities. The purpose of Regional Synergies is to show collaborative, local, win-win solutions. And you might notice that our name is Cooperatives First. And we believe partnerships like these could be supported by cooperative businesses, but the partnerships that we are featuring aren't necessarily cooperative businesses. We hope these stories you find inspiring, and maybe even consider a co-op as a way of creating local opportunities in the future. So today this event is taking place in a virtual space, but I do want to acknowledge that Cooperatives First is located in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, in Treaty 6 territory. And where we're located is actually not far from the Wanuskewin Heritage Park that has been a meeting place for the people across the Northern Plains for more than 6,000 years, and we are in the homeland of the Métis. So today we are proud to hear from three amazing people who will give us insight into the Eagle's Landing project in North Battleford, Saskatchewan. So Eagle's Landing is a 357-acre development and was the first urban reserve in Saskatchewan to be granted its own neighborhood within the limits of a city. The Red Pheasant Cree Nation owns the land and is working with the City of North Battleford to eventually build around 150 acres of commercial development, 100 acres of residential, 50 acres of industrial, and 50 acres of parks and recreation space. To date, these partners have developed a gas bar and are constructing a 17-unit retail project that will include the city's first Starbucks. In this webinar, we'll hear from leaders involved in the project and to see how it came to be, how the partners are collaborating, and how working together, communities can create lasting economic change that benefits everyone. So now I'll pass it off to my colleague, Riley.
Thanks, Trista. I have the pleasure of introducing our three great panelists. So today we have three great panelists joining us. I'll start off with Tanya LaRose. Tanya LaRose brings a rich network of community contacts throughout Western Canada in both the residential and commercial industry. Since 2014, she's received numerous accolades for community contributions, including the YWCA Woman of Distinction Award for Community Building, the #1 individual in Saskatchewan for donations to the Royal LePage Shelter Foundation, the inaugural Innovator in Residence at SIIT, and the Royal LePage Top 2% Award for Sales Production in Canada. She has also spoken by invitation on CBC National Radio as a real estate industry expert in 2016. In 2024, Tanya was invited by the Colorado Association of Realtors to speak on an expert diversity panel regarding Indigenous inclusion in real estate. Tanya LaRose Realty Prof Corp is the Indigenous, female-owned business that assisted Red Pheasant First Nation in being the debut First Nation in Saskatchewan to open up their own 350-acre neighborhood, Eagles Landing, within city limits in North Battleford in October of 2023. Thank you for joining us today, Tanya.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Marie Adam. Marie Adam has been the Director of Education with Red Pheasant Cree Nation for the past 3 years. She graduated from the University of Saskatchewan with distinction in 1990 with a bachelor's degree in education and is currently completing her master's in educational administration. Her lineage is with the Star Blanket Cree Nation and is a member of the Poundmaker Cree Nation. She has worked in the fields of education, special education, and educational leadership for several years. In her past role as the General Manager for Saskatoon Tribal Council, Urban Services for 10 years, she gained a unique skill set specializing in successful funding applications across governments and various departments. In addition, throughout her past as a business owner, federal and First Nation government consultant, proposal writer, mother, and grandmother, these skills have also been enhanced. She has acted in the capacity of project manager, lead on infrastructure, business planning, and proposal writing for the Red Pheasant North Battleford land project for the past 6 years. Her goal is to see successful businesses on the Red Pheasant urban lands, a residential area, and an innovative modern new school for the North Battleford area that focuses on respecting and teaching the traditional First Nation culture. Thanks for joining us today, Marie.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, we have Jan Swanson. Jan Swanson provides vision, fosters enthusiasm, and common purpose in those he leads. He's experienced in economic development, business planning, and consulting, project management, strategic planning, corporate training, and business operations. Jan holds a Bachelor of Administration from the University of Regina and was certified as a Business Retention and Expansion Master Consultant from the University of Minnesota, followed by an additional certification through the Business Retention and Expansion International. Jan worked in business and economic development for over 25 years with the provincial government. He led or participated in numerous public and private partnerships to enhance collaboration for consultation and feedback on new directions and current services. He was the executive sponsor for Lean Small Business Loans Association, Kaizen. Upon the request of the Premier of Saskatchewan, he led a business center initiative in Ukraine. Jan was the executive in charge of the BREI International Conference held in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan in 2012. He was also responsible provincially for the development of a business succession transition program and an entrepreneurial development system. Jan then spent 8 years with EAON Executive Business Coaching, providing coaching and business planning services before joining the City of North Battleford as its Economic Development Manager in November of 2022. Thank you for joining us today, Jan.
Thank you, Ronnie.
No problem. So these are our 3 great and exciting panelists. We're going to jump right into the questions we have prepared for the panelists to kind of just explore and understand the project a little bit more. We'll start the webinar with one specific question for each guest, then kind of move on to questions that can be answered by all or any of the guests. Following that, we'll do the Q&A sessions with the questions that come in the chat. So if folks have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. So we'll start with the first question we have, and this one I'll ask to Tanya. Tanya, could you share an overview of Eagles Landing? What is it, and how did this economic development project come about?
Yes, absolutely. So it's come about really thanks to the leadership and the stewardship of Red Pheasant Cree Nation, dating all the way back to inception with the original Chief Red Pheasant back in 1876 when the reserve was first established. And during that signing, the Crown had mentioned, we wish you prosperity. And lo and behold, over a century later, Red Pheasant is indeed experiencing the precipice of prosperity through this historical development as being having the ability to debut Saskatchewan's very first urban reserve neighborhood, which is a victory for for so many, not only First Nations, but the entire population, because as we know, anytime there's any sort of socioeconomic development and progress and inclusion and equity and equality, all of that good stuff, it leads to a better quality of life for all. It leads to better mental health, better wellness as a whole, which can help us all move forward. And essentially, we fast forward to 30 years ago, when the land that Eagles Landing currently embodies was initially purchased. Especially the leadership in the past 30 years, it's been a lot of tough decisions that have been made. I know Marie's been involved with the project a bit longer than I have. She's got 6 years, I have 3 years in. And it's become well known that initially the land where Eagles Landing sits was not ideal land. But as time has passed, I'd say coincidentally, it became some prime real estate. But personally, I don't believe in coincidences. I definitely believe this was God ordained, because it's too perfect, and there's too many elements that are really fascinating when you look at the historical value and the potential for TRC, which is synergies, and it is cooperatives, and it's everybody working together. But that's just a little bit about the narrative and how it's come to be. Essentially, Eagles Landing will be a 10 to 15-year development. As mentioned, it's going to have commercial, light industrial, and residential. Of course, the residential will be a proud piece because it will be Red Pheasant's contribution to combating the national housing crisis, which is a huge issue right now across Canada, and even locally in Saskatchewan, throughout the different cities and whatnot. Right now, we're doing phase 1, which is, as mentioned, a 17-bay strip mall and 2 anchor tenants. We're proud to be debuting the city's very first Starbucks on Red Pheasant's land, Eagles Landing, which will be a bit of an indicator on the direction that we're taking it from a real estate aspect, because we're really recognizing the reality that there are stigmas and outdated beliefs, stereotypes that we would like to completely eradicate and show the strength in this development, so that we can really pave the way for others that will undoubtedly follow suit. Hopefully, other cities will see the opportunity of partnering, whether it's formal or informal, with First Nations, to draw in that inclusion and recognize the power in numbers and how it benefits the economy as a whole. Of course, we do have a couple potential other monopoly style businesses, again, to really strengthen the commercial value, considering it's right on Territorial Drive in North Battleford, which has the highest traffic count in the city, aside from Yellowhead Highway, of course. North Battleford sits on the Yellowhead Highway, which again brings great value to the entire macro view of this development, and it being in North Battleford, because North Battleford is essentially, given its proximity and its geographical positioning between Saskatoon and Lloydminster, and then as well, the high population, there's about 200,000 people in northern Saskatchewan that often take North Battleford as their gateway to other amenities, as well as Saskatoon, which obviously has a lot more amenities. And speaking of Saskatoon, actually, for those who are familiar with the city, the layout and the model of the master plan for Eagles Landing is going to be similar to Stonebridge, because both of them have just prime location in terms of real estate, being bordering the ring road, which gives great access, accessibility, visibility. Eagles Landing, like phase 1, has a traffic light at it, so all of the tenants have full advertising, 60 to 90 seconds every time that red light hits, to for consumers and through traffic, local traffic, to observe their business. And of course, following phase 1, we will have phase 2 and phase 3, just closing out that the face basically of Territorial and Eagles Landing to really capitalize on that that retail value, and again to push for economic growth within the entire city and the community. We're really presenting it as a business hub right now. And of course, because it is still treaty land, as opposed to fee simple, all of the First Nation tenants can practice their treaty rights. And of course, at the same time, we're making it very clear that it's not just a First Nation reserve, or pardon me, a First Nation neighborhood. It is a neighborhood open to all. It's a safe place for anybody who wishes to share in prosperity and build in this new direction of equity and inclusion. And it will be developed in that manner. Essentially, it's a symbolic truth and reconciliation, and we're pretty proud to present that within the first year of development. We only broke ground last October on the 18th, which means our 1-year anniversary celebration is coming up in October on the 18th, and there may or may not be fireworks. I'm not at liberty to say yet, but it's definitely something to be celebrated, because again, it benefits the entire community. And if those synergies continue in the way that they have been, there's absolutely no reason that this shouldn't be a success, and it shouldn't become a model that other First Nations and cities cannot practice and use to their benefit in their respective provinces.
Wow. A lot of great and future ongoing work coming into this project, and it's not even a year, into breaking ground. So that's amazing to hear. Thanks for sharing that, Tanya. Up next, I've got a question for Marie. Marie, can you tell us about the history of Red Pheasant's purchase of the land and how it came to work with the City of North Battleford to create this development?
Thank you. Thanks, Tanya. It's also good to have somebody who's able, like Tanya, who's eloquent in her speaking and being able to summarize where things are at. And that's why I'm not in marketing. I'm in the background doing the other stuff. So Tanya's job is to be able to sell this project that we're working on, and she always does such a good job. So thanks, Tanya. Giving a bit of the history, while we're saying we're breaking ground, it was a year ago. There was a lot of previous work, actually, and years of work that went into getting to the stage where we're at. So the exact year when the purchase of the land actually took place, and that would have been prior to about 1995, and it went through in around 95, and being open and honest, that I could say that the relationships weren't always the greatest between the City of North Battleford and the surrounding First Nations in the area. And it was an uncertain time, I guess, to say, of what actually could happen and or where it might go in terms of with the purchase. And the first stage went through, and the land was always used as for agricultural purposes, basically, and was kind of left at that stage. Then took a number of years to work on a service agreement. So with the persistence, and the leadership of our past chiefs and councils, and the past council mayor as well, it took time for them to be able to realize and move towards a service agreement that they'd be able to work with. Like, I think it was the late Julian Sadlowski. Jan can maybe confirm it, but he hasn't been in Battleford for a long time, but an incumbent in Hamilton over on the North Battleford side. And on our side, we had our past chiefs, And I do believe it's Sheldon Watney, who was in at the time in around 2010 when the service agreement was actually signed with the City of North Battleford and Red Pheasant. And that took years to get to that stage at that time. From there, it basically kind of sat because they didn't know which way they were going with the development. I mean, the band wanted to put some residences in, and as you said, its housing crisis has always been there for majority of our First Nations. But there was also the thought that they wanted to see what they could do with in terms of economic development as well. And the number one biggest thing is that there was no, the service agreement was drafted, but there was no services actually on the land. And so a number of years ago, the past chief and council were in, had asked me to work on looking at doing a new school. And so that's my goal as a Powmaker band member. We have a lot of First Nations kids in around probably in North Battleford and surrounding area, about 500 kids that are First Nations and or Métis lineage. And we had thought, you know, instead of just looking at just our Red Pheasant students that would be in there, what about catering servicing to all? So to be able to do that, it's hard to put a school in the middle of a field when there's no infrastructure. So that's what I got to work on, and about 6 years ago did the first agreements and funding proposals to get that started and to actually start activating the service agreement, and did the business plan so that we have a store that opened in May of 21 on the land. And even things like trying to work with the Ministry of Highways, City of North Battleford to do lights at that corner. So we did the funding, we put lights in, and working in partnership with the city, they've taken over and they operate and look after the lights that are there now. So that gives kind of like a background as to where we are at today, but it was a number of years of planning and past leadership commitment that really got us to where we are, and that's on both sides, dealing with North Battleford city leadership and as well as Red Pheasant.
Awesome. Thanks for giving us the background and the history on that, Marie. And then I have a question for Jan. Jan, could you discuss the economic impacts of the project from the city's perspective?
Well, the Eagles Landing project brings a number of economic benefits to North Battleford. First, of course, generates employment opportunities both during the construction phase and again, once the commercial, residential, industrial spaces are operational, there'll be a lot more job creation. And the introduction of new businesses to the city, of course, builds excitement, and it'll attract more investors, more visitors, and it will also increase local spending. So all kind of a win-win on that. Now, in terms of the city, the property development will be paying for city services, which helps spread the costs among a number of or a larger group of the residents and business owners, which can lead to enhanced public services and infrastructure. So that's a win-win for the residents of North Battleford. And the win-win for Red Pheasant is they become more economically independent, which is great. So in addition, the collaboration sort of shows North Battleford as open to innovative partnerships. And as Marie and Tanya said, it's taken a long time to get to this point, but we're seeing more of a rapid movement than we have before. So that's the great part, is that excitement, that building of it, that additional investment in our community.
Awesome. Those sound great. I'm going to now transition to a second part of these panelist questions. Questions that are open to anyone and everyone on the panel. I'll kind of just direct this one to be open, but what were some of the significant challenges faced while bringing this project forward, and how are they addressed by both parties?
Well, I think
Well,
one of the, so go
no,
ahead.
go ahead, Jen. Yep.
I was going to say first was transitioning the land into an urban reserve. So that involved navigating complex regulatory frameworks, right? So we have 4 levels of government. We have Red Pheasant, we have the federal government, we have the City of North Battleford, and the provincial government. So it becomes more complex that way. So I think it's taken a lot of patience and a lot of hard work, going back to when Marie started working on this, well over 6 years ago. So.
Yeah, I was going to say that definitely in dealing with the different levels of government, but the number one thing is you're taking a piece of land that was agricultural with no infrastructure and wanting to put all kinds of different phases that we're doing on, and really having to develop all of the infrastructure. And that's been a challenge that number one, funding, the amount of money that it costs to put infrastructure in is phenomenal. I didn't know that all that stuff until I got into this 6 years ago. It was like, okay, so I want to put this school over there. Well, that's a long ways away from the water and the sewer and all the other hookups, right? So it was a number of years, and you want to have it tomorrow. We said we want to have our school tomorrow. Well, that doesn't happen like that, right? And to be able to do the proper planning for such a large area of land as well. And as was said at the beginning, this is a large area of land within a municipality that is not just about the economic development. It's about what the people are wanting is residential. But to get to the residential, we still have to build all these other things and put a whole neighborhood together. And neighborhoods aren't built overnight. So that's a challenge, right? And then we've actually even had to change some of the overall planning of what we originally had because we're also next door to an airport. And we've had to include that in there as well. We have to make sure that we have our playground areas in the whole build. So yeah, those types of things were, if you want to talk about challenges, infrastructure is a challenge, and especially trying to find the funding for it. And we have actually a really good setup now for communication, because again, the number one factor is communication. Things can go sideways quite quickly when you're dealing with such a large project and so many different elements involved in it. So we have a scheduled weekly meeting that we log into. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes, but because we meet every week, I think that has really also helped with the lines of communication as well.
And from a real estate standpoint, as Marie mentioned, I am indeed always selling. One of the biggest challenges has been, again, curbing that public perception from the old, outdated views of urban reserves, right? At the end of the day, they're just like provincial parks. When you lease out your cabin, this happens across the country thousands and thousands of times per year. There's really no reason for consumers, investors, shareholders to shy away from this. As a matter of fact, there's massive opportunity once this niche space starts to open up, which I absolutely believe it will, because we have some really fantastic First Nations making strides with settlements and their own self-governance. And it will take some time. I have worked with other First Nations who have attempted market housing. And again, I continue to see that barrier based on those old, outdated beliefs and the reluctancy of the broader general public to pursue. But again, that falls on the shoulders of all of us to continue to spread the message that this is a completely standard investment option that happens every day across Canada. And for that reason, I've got all of the 17 bays, the 2 anchor tenants. Anytime we have a new project that is up and coming, it goes directly to MLS, Saskatchewan multiple listing system. So everybody can see it's just like any other property. pays full commission to any agents. So if we have any real estate specialists on the line today, bring your clients, bring your network. It is a standard business deals to be done.
I think all of your answers really speak to something even you mentioned earlier, Tanya, with moving forward with that the idea of cooperation and communication between many different parties and on many different areas to bring this project forward. And it seems like it's really getting there. So that's great to hear from all three of you on these challenges and how things are moving forward and how the groups are working together. I've got another question, once again, to everyone. How are the different actors involved in the decision-making processes within this project, and what steps did the group really ensure to take to make smooth and effective collaboration happen with decision-making?
Well, I think that comes back to like Marie with our city manager deciding that we were going to meet weekly, whether it's for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, depending on what concerns or issues are there. And I think also having great people like working with Marie and Tanya, we couldn't ask for better. And they help build the excitement, and they all are also so committed to what it is we're trying to do. So that joint planning committee helped, and also everyone staying focused on what it is we want to achieve together.
I think that setting the goals in place really helped as well too. And the number one thing I'd have to say is you have to have that commitment from your leadership. And that again is on both sides between the City of North Battleford and Red Pheasant. And none of this would be taking place if we didn't have that commitment from the leadership. And we have gone through changes as well too, like each sides going through an election, and that commitment was still there for the project to be able to move forward. And so I think that the commitment is now moved past that as well too into the administration. So as Jan had said, when he said Randy, that's the general manager for the city. And then for myself as the project lead for a number of years, we made that commitment to say, you know what, we're just going to be doing this every week because there's so many people involved, and people pop in and out of our weekly meetings as well too that we have. Like our engineering firm is in there, the contractor builders. Tanya might join in sometimes. Not everybody joins in on every meeting, but if we need one of them to be there, a text message will be sent and say, look, you got to come in on the Wednesday meeting, because this is what we're discussing. So I think that element of communication and commitment from your leadership and administration is very important to have. And again, and of course, like with the funding in the terms of with the First Nation for the development, making that commitment and sticking to it. They've invested a lot of money into this, and now that's where you see now, since the money is being invested in, and of course I've applied for a lot of grant money as well with federal government, that we've gotten some support as well from them. That's when things really start to move, because now money is being spent, and so now the revenue sources need to come in, right? So that's why we're seeing more quicker movement now within this past year and the next year as well too, for the next phases that we're developing.
And just to sort of echo a little bit of what Jan and Marie already touched on, I think ultimately every day just recognizing that each of us are public servants, and that duty to the community only intensifies the further up the chain of command it goes. I know the current chief, Cody Benson, he is absolutely committed. I know we've all seen him. He's working double overtime to push this project forward. And he was previously the band manager. So he's been a part of it heavily in so many ways. And prior to that, his dad was chief, and he saw that growing up. So he's a very strong leader to have on this project, as well as Mayor Gillen. He has been fantastic. Every time him and I talk about, selling North Battleford, selling Eagles Landing, it's always a fantastic time, and he's enthusiastic, believe it or not. It might even exceed mine.
Mhm.
So again, I would encourage anybody who's listening to bring it to the top of the pyramid. That is where it needs to be driven from. That, you know, you need, obviously all of the other pieces need to be strong as well, but that driving force needs to be emphasized right at the top. So yeah, just have those discussions in private, in public, find the right setting, because again, it's the potential for something really fantastic.
When our current chief, Cody Benson, came onto the band, working as band manager a number of years ago, the band had a lot of financial things and other issues they had to deal with, and he's like Tanya said, you might as well say 24/7 available, you know, for band membership and for the band as well too. And he really made a commitment to turn things around, and he brought people in at the different times of when needed as well too. And his leadership has, this project wouldn't be where it is today if we didn't have that leadership that he's provided for us. And he brought another person that we also that I work closely with as well, and in our team, like Tanya said, is Austin Ahenecue, and he came in as director of finance, and again has done a lot of the background financial things that need to be done, and assisting me when I need help with the proposals I do. Like between the three of us, it was a lot of writing that I had to do, and they provided that support and direction as well, and leadership that I needed as well to get the things done. And the commitment is there; it's there all the time from them. So it's very important. And the same with the mayor, and having, it's almost like you say he has a like a 3-minute or 5-minute elevator speech that he has ready to be able to sell the project, and always with a smile on his face and 100% support. And the same with Randy as the general manager, and Jan as well. So, you know, it makes a difference having that.
It all sounds great. Sounds like there's a lot of buy-in and there's a lot of positivity and good outlook for this project now and moving forward as well from both sides, leadership and everybody involved with the project. So that's always great to hear. We've come across the time where we're going to open this up for Q&A from the crowd, from all the attendees. I'm going to switch back out with Trista, and Trista's just going to open up the Q&A session for folks to ask their questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free, drop them into the chat function, and we'll get to those questions and we'll ask them to the group here. So just give me 1 second to switch us out again. All right, we should be good to go. Trista, I'll leave it to you.
Okay, so while we're waiting for any questions, so whether or not you want to slide them into the chat or raise your hand, we will call on you. But as you're waiting, I actually have one question for any of the panelists. So looking back, what lessons have you learned from this project that could be useful for other cities and First Nations looking to undertake similar collaborative economic development initiatives?
I seem to be going first here. Sorry, guys. I think the key is, as Tanya had indicated, regular meetings, both Tanya and Marie, regular meetings with key decision makers, right? Even though there's a lot of people in behind working on it, that's like key decision makers. And the other is addressing issues promptly, right? And that's what those weekly meetings allowed us to do to a degree. And I mean, we haven't got everything solved, but the key is we want to keep moving forward as we try and work on some of those concerns. And I think so it's that building that trust, and that comes as we're having our weekly meetings, but also flexibility and adaptability. What does First Nations need for Eagles Landing? What does the city need in terms of its legislation, and how we work back and forth for that? So I think prioritizing and building a strong trust-based relationship and understanding the different perspectives is extremely helpful. I'll see if Maria or Tanya.
Yeah, I can chime in definitely. I may sound like a broken record, but again, leaving behind and completely abandoning all stereotypes and all egos when you have any sort of proximity to a project like this, because there's no space for that. That's counterproductive. And as Jan mentioned, there needs to be a level of trust and communication. For example, and genuine in that manner. For example, Jan here was actually the one who turned us on to the applying for the Saskatchewan Economic Development Alliance Award. Without his wink and a nudge to put Eagles Landing forward, we would have never got the award as the economic development project of the year in Saskatchewan. So that's a little example, well, actually a really fantastic example of how once you set aside ego, you set aside those old belief systems and really just throw yourself into the project, and recognize this is not about us, this is about community, and not only the existing communities, but all communities to follow forward, going forward.
Okay, thank you so much for your answers. Those are great and insights. We do have a question from Candace. Candace, if you want to unmute yourself.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't sure if I unmuted me or you unmuted me. Anyway, thank you so much for putting this on today. I'm thoroughly enjoying this conversation, and just a shout out to my friends. And when I see leadership from our community like this, makes me extremely proud. I was wondering, I know how hard it is to sort of shift public opinion when it comes to, selecting communities and working within our communities and showing that. Can you tell me anything about sort of the public engagement process you would have had to done with the City of North Battleford and its citizens? I've been a part of some change initiatives here in Saskatchewan where when a vote had to go to City Council, sometimes there was opposition and there was lots of sort of, stress and community concerns that we had to sort of deal with. So is there a story about how you brought the citizens of North Battleford to come to some public support of this project?
You want me to go, Jan, or?
Sure. Yep.
Hi, Candace.
Yeah.
I guess that, again, I'd have to go back to between the city and Red Pheasant working together to say, we set those goals to say that we're going to make this project be able to go forward. We're going to have to be able to work together. We have to backtrack on some things to say, how are we going to be able to hit where are the areas that we need the support. So when the agreement was signed in 2010 with the service agreement, going back that far, I guess, is where, if you speak to past leadership, it took years. It took years for them to get to that point. And then we actually had to go to the city for a bylaw change. What is that, about a month ago, Jan? I guess or so.
Yeah.
And the process through that as well too is like, exactly what is it that we actually have to do right now? Instead of trying to ask for the whole area, let's just deal with our section of what we're building on right now. So breaking it down into pieces instead of doing the broad, I think makes a big difference. If we try to go to the city right now and change everything of what we're wanting to do for the next 10 years, we're going to run into some problems. We would run into problems. We know that. So it's like, let's do a section at a time, just like we did the store. Now we're going to do this section.
Yeah, and I agree with Marie that phased approach that they've undertaken has been really incredibly helpful and helped manage the complexities. Like she said, if they go with everything at once, right? And this way it's phased in, we know which steps we need to take next.
The lights, trying to put a traffic light in, that was a whole nother one. And we even had to go to the province because the Ministry of Highway has say on that road. So it's like one thing at a time. Okay, let's just go where we wanted the light got shot down. We had to move it. So then that changed everything. So yeah, you have to, and be flexible, I guess would be the next thing then. be able to work with just what is it do we need right now, and focus on that, and be flexible in being able to change if needed as well too.
Hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. So next we have a question from Walsham. So if you'd like to unmute and ask your question, feel free.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate the insight you've given us to this project, Jan, Maria, and Tanya. I've been listening, and as an economic development professional, I'm calling from the territory of the Pheasant Nation in BC right now. I'm curious what the timeline was, like from the moment you had this concept to the time that you were able to get the ball rolling to where you are now. Like, how long did that take for you to actualize all of this? Because I know it didn't happen overnight, and I'm just curious how long that took.
Well, from the sales standpoint and sort of the narrative that I keep pushing here, I would say about 3 years. That's when leadership engaged myself and the developer currently, which is Montana Construction. And of course, from there, we worked on the different angles of development planning. We had Marie and her expertise and her existing relations in terms of infrastructure, and we're just slowly continuing in that direction. Marie might have a little bit more context there.
I would say that you'd be looking at probably like that, like Tanya said, in phases of 3, because even when I came on, it took probably about 3 years to work with the city to get the hookups that we needed. So if you're looking at basic infrastructure into a field, you need to find out where those services are coming from. You got to do the applications, the permits that are needed, the engineered drawing designs. You're looking at about a 3-year phase for that component as well, and arranging all of the financing that's needed. And so that would be one phase. The next phase being like when Tanya came in, what businesses, we had to have an anchor tenant put in there as well in that first phase. So when you're planning in that first three years phase and you're getting your infrastructure done, you can't get any of that without having an anchor tenant in there as well too, unless you want 100% funded on your own. If you're going for grant money and or infrastructure monies, there has to be a business component to that. So that's where the store came from and why we have the Centex there, because we had to have that all in the first phase of planning for infrastructure. The second phase, like Tanya said, has been about 3 years, because again, you need the engineering departments in there. You need to find a anchor or developer as well too that's going to join in with you. We tried a number, 2-3 different ways of trying to sell, even saying we do a long-term lease for a developer to come in. That didn't work out as well. So again, Red Pheasant had to come forward with their own money to invest, because it's hard. People look at a field and they can't always vision what it's going to look like, even though we've put 2-3 different marketing packages together. I think we have a good one now, but again, we'll probably be changing that. That helped us to get to where we are now. So we need, what is our next 3-year plan? So Tanya, myself, and they've actually brought another lady in now to help with the DevCorp. We're going to be sitting and changing those plans around, because we met with the city and saying, okay, but if we're going to do this building here, we have to change where our residential area might be looking at going. So we now have to go into, I would say again, a next 3-year plan. What are we doing for the next 3 years for our development and where we're going to be, which is going to have a school, because that's my goal. In 3 years' time, we'll be building on that school. So that's where having those goals set like that and sticking to them and saying, we're going to make this happen. How are we going to make this happen? So that's where I'd say about in 3-year sections is what you're looking at.
Thank you very much. I have a quick follow-up question, if that's okay, because you'd mentioned how like your initial strategy of just like looking for a developer that would lease the land didn't work. So the current marketing package you have is a contribution between the developer and Red Pheasant Nation? Is that what?
Red Pheasant. Red Pheasant
Okay.
put there, yeah. So next phase will be through investing on the investment that we have now that we've put in.
Okay.
And the band has put in.
Each phase feeds the next following phase, and just like any other standard development of this scale. And of course, it is also standard for the master plan to pivot and weave as years progress, especially when you're looking at over a decade potentially of development time. So that could be expected too from your real estate.
And having that business plan done, like I had a 10-year plan done at the 3-year phase of where we're at, was very proud to say that when I met with the funding agents for the next go round, we've met the objectives of our 3-year plan of where we were at. And it's so good to see that when you put a business plan together like that, that you're actually meeting the stages, and you can actually say, this is done and this is done, like, so having a business plan overall. So one thing, having your plan in place, but then putting in a business plan that you can actually, that has goals that are set for those every 2-3 years of what you're wanting to meet is very important as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have time for a couple more questions. Then I'd like to call on Bhavesh, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, I have just one question. Like you mentioned about the bylaw, like you didn't ask to change the bylaws for the entire land, just breaking into the piece. So that is the good idea. So same thing, like I want to just know, particularly for development permit and the building permit. So did you get the development permit and building permit for the entire area, or just breaking into the pieces? And what is the total acreage right now you are considering in your phase 1? Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so in our weekly meetings, that's what we do, is we ensure that whatever permits we're going to be needing, we apply only for the permits that we need for that specific part. It's the process that we've worked out, because then it makes it easier as well for the city to be able to push those ones forward that are needed. But also keeping in mind, okay, for the next phase, if we need this done, if that means that we need to have some changes, then that's going to require a bylaw change. Then we better get that in now, because and give yourself like it. And again, every city is different. We've set ourselves to a 3-month type of we have to have at least 3 months if it's a big change that we need. If it's something small, the city has given a guarantee to us to have those turned over within a couple of weeks. So again, that's with working together in a partnership, that they prioritize the ones that are coming in for us as well too, so that we're not left on hold waiting for 2 weeks or 3 weeks for a permit to go through. The city has made that commitment. So that's what you call a partnership, right? Jan, if you had any.
Yep, no, that's how it's going. We're doing it phased in as needed. And those meetings regularly have really helped, because then we can identify, or Marie will identify, what needs to be done next and what permits we need to move forward on. So it really helps us too, more coordinated approach.
Hey, so I think we don't have any questions right now from the group. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. This has been an amazing conversation. We've learned so much about the Eagles Landing development project and how it works, and how it can benefit like both the city and Red Pheasant, and just the innovative way you guys have been working together. So once again, I want to thank Marie, Jan, and Tanya so much for this conversation. I'd like to thank everybody for attending today on a beautiful Friday morning. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either Riley or myself, or have any ideas for the next regional synergies. We're always open, but any questions on the co-op process or anything like that. So once again, thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon. Muestas.
Thank you, everyone.